Hey, Larry here. Acts 29 today. Coming to you from Sunny World headquarters in Chiang Mai, Thailand. Well, today we're going to continue on the journey from where we left off last time to where this guy named John came and talked to me and some young guys. Uh, and he had an opportunity that he presented to us that he felt God wanted him to do. And so he was talking to three of us about it. Well, what John said is that he wanted to go back down to Mexico and visit a bunch of these places where he used to minister, all the way from Mexico City down to Guatemala and then back up to Mexico City. We'd be gone for a month, and so he was asking each one of us if we wanted to go on the trip with him because he wanted to take some young guys and mentor them and teach them some things about missions and whatnot. Man, I couldn't believe it. Here, that's exactly what I was wanting to do, and this guy comes up and asks me if I want to go to Mexico on a mission trip. And I was I don't even think I'd been saved. I hadn't even been saved for a year. It was like 11 months, something like that. Because I said, well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I want to go. And so, yeah, somehow I got the money and the time, and so it was November 1973 that we began that journey. And I have a picture out of the book of me the day we left, and that's me with the long hair and the scraggly beard. There, maybe that's a little easier to see. And got my bag of clothes. And there I am getting ready to leave Portland International Airport on my first mission trip. So that was, that was a major event. And that event would change my life because that was my first time out of the country. So we left Portland. We flew to Los Angeles. It was on Western Airlines, which is no more, but that was a big airline at the time. So we were on Western Airlines, Portland, LA to Mexico City on a DC-10. And so that was an experience for me just in itself, because I had never really flown out of the country before and with a passport and all that. So we got to Mexico City, and I was just amazed at how big this city was. At that time, it was about 9 million people, I suppose. And it when we flew in, we got down to a lower altitude, but it seems like we flew for a half an hour and we were still over the city before we got to the airport. And so me, being into flying and everything, I was amazed. So we got to Mexico City. We spent a few days in Mexico City, and we met some people that he knew. There were some meetings. We went around, and did a few little touristy things at the Pyramid of the Sun and learned a lot about some of that stuff. We went to this. One amazing thing was is we went to a big museum there in Mexico City, and it was all about the Aztecs and all that kind of stuff. And so one of the things that amazed me was I was looking in these glass cases at these stone carvings, little stone carvings of figures and faces and all that kind of stuff. And I was looking at these faces and I thought, wow, you got to be kidding me. Those are demon faces. Those are demonic faces. Because I used to see a lot of demonic faces when I was coming down from acid and drugs. These faces would just fly by me for hours. Hundreds of faces, just the most grotesque, ugly, demonic faces. And I knew those faces anywhere. And when I saw these faces in these carvings, I called John over and I said, John, I said, I've seen these faces before. They're demonic. They're demon faces. And he said, yes, they are, because these people were taking peyote, hallucinogenic drugs, and they were carving, things that they saw while they were on the dark side in the spirit world. And so to me, that was an amazing thing, and I began to start connecting some of the dots to what was going on in some of these civilizations. Then we got a car. Somebody loaned him a car, and we drove all the way from Mexico City down through Oaxaca, Cuernavaca, Veracruz, and along the way we were going to different villages, different towns, and having meetings where people knew him, where he'd ministered before. I kind of hate to show you this picture, but I don't know what I was thinking, and I don't know who let me out of the country with these pants. Oh my word. Anyway, this was kind of a posed picture we did, kind of fun, like I'm preaching or something, and pretty embarrassing to see those pants. But anyway, we had to dress up a little bit in some of these places, so that was what I looked like back in those days. Or at least when I was on that trip. So it ended up, when we went to some of these villages and stuff, and sometimes we'd drive in this car as far out into the jungle as we could, and then we'd walk for several miles, and then we'd get in a dugout canoe, and we'd go across a river, and then we'd turn into some small tributary and go back up in there. You could almost touch the bank on both sides. It was so narrow. And there'd be a little village, and we'd go to the little village, and John would preach. We'd give our testimonies, and we'd bless the people there. And so that was what we did as we went all the way down to Guatemala. And then we got down to the border with Guatemala, and John said, he said, there's a kind of an underground church thing in Guatemala because they were in some persecution at the time. And he said, we're really not supposed to be in the country of Guatemala, but this is not at a regular border checkpoint. This is on a road kind of in the jungle by this town. And so he said, if you want, we can go in there. He said, but if we get caught, if somebody calls the police and we get caught, we could end up in jail for a few days. So he said, I don't know, it's up to you guys. We said, let's do it. Let's do it. we're young and, we're looking for a little adventure, right? So we drive across into Guatemala. We go to this place and we have a big service, and it's a wonderful service. We go back across the border and we get in the bus, and before the bus can leave, the police come, and they think we've been across the border having a meeting. And so they question us, and we just keep saying, no comprende, senor, no comprende. And so they finally got frustrated and left. And so we got to leave too. So anyway, then we drove up the other coast and went all the way back to Mexico City. There were also a lot of communist guerrillas at that time, trying to take over Mexico, I guess. And so sometimes we'd be in small towns and you'd hear an explosion during the night and find out the guerrillas had blown up the bank in the town and robbed the money for their stuff. So that was kind of a weird deal that was going on. So I was 30 days in Mexico on that trip. That trip absolutely changed my life for the good. And it was 30 days, and I got back home just before, I don't know what it was, like a week before Christmas, I guess. And but I must say that after 30 days in Mexico, and some sketchy situations, I was okay with getting to Mexico City in the airport and flying out of that country. I felt like we got out of there because we had a few issues going on sometimes. But it was all good, and it was a great time. I was back home for Christmas, and then right after Christmas, another amazing thing happened, and I don't have time to get into that one in this video, but in the next video I will share the next really amazing thing that happened to me on this journey, because things were, these were things that were foundational things that years later would prove to be some of the things that really, really helped me make some other decisions that I would have to make years later. And so this trip to Mexico was a very foundational trip for me, and it really was beginning to get into my spirit and into my heart that this was something that God probably had for me at some point in time. And so that was beginning to get into my spirit, man, even at that young age in the Lord, just 1 year in, and he'd already got me out of the country on my first trip, and it was so amazing to me to be on that trip at that age. I was still 22 at that time when I went on that trip. So it was very, very foundational for me in what would happen later in my life. So in the next video, we will find out what happened next, because it was another amazing thing and another amazing time in my young Christian life. I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for tuning in.